Okay, feel free to grab a seat. I'm just going to sort my papers out. All right, so today's passage is Luke 19, 1-10. He, Jesus, entered Jericho and was passing through it. A man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd he could not, because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him, because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." So he hurried down and was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and said, "He has gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner." Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, half of my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much." Then Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he too is the son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and to save the lost." Zacchaeus feels to me like a bit of a relatable character. We have at least 3 things in common. The first is that he is short. Here he is, being short and up a tree. I'm not short. I'm technically average height, but this is me next to my little brother. Yeah, it's just not fair. It's like he got all the height. He stole from me. I don't understand it. And then compared to the giants of our church flat, I'm very tiny. They often like to play a little game with me, which is called, let's put things where Steffi can't reach them. So Exhibit A. Sometimes we do weird art nights, and I think it's nice for people to see their weird art on our wall. There's art on the ceiling, though, not where I would have put it. But by the time I go and get the ladder, climb up the ladder, bring the painting down, put the ladder away, oh, well, I got to get back down the ladder, obviously, put the ladder away, someone will have put another painting up. Exhibit B. This is our kitchen cupboard, and in case you're worried, it is a Christmas cake on that second up from the top there. So our kitchen cupboard, right? It's overhead, and I could understand if maybe I couldn't reach that top shelf. I'm probably never going to get to that baking dish, that's fine, but I can't reach the top 3. Someone has played a practical joke on me before I was born. It's not right. So, second similarity, Zacchaeus, there he is again. He goes to great lengths for that which he believes will change his life. So I was born on a golf course, which is relevant. And it's a lot less, I was technically born in a hospital. I grew up on a golf course. I'm fact-checking myself in case my parents watch at home. It's a lot less fancy than you would think. There's less caviar and more like rabbit holes and gorse bushes. But here, I've just got a few photos as evidence, me trying to earn my keep. So here I am. Actually, that's me on Smoko. Here I am, I guess that's me getting ready to take the truck out to the irrigators just to check on something. And then I'm getting ready to mow the lawns as well, which is a big part of living on a golf course. So while Zacchaeus is climbing trees to see Jesus, who will change his life, I, as an 18-month-old, I thought I was 3 years, but my mum was like, no, 18-month-old, I was there I am. I was scaling a 6-foot fence, traversing a gorse paddock, just to plonk myself down in front of, wait for it, life-changing, the local bagpipe player. Yep, strange. Turns out living on a golf course, it attracts all kinds of antisocial instruments, and I love all of them equally, and I always have. Third similarity, though, there is Zacchaeus again. His encounter with Zacchaeus is an invitation to take what he has and to repurpose it so that it reflects more of the nature of God. And this is an invitation that I've experienced as well, but no spoilers, we will get to that later. Before we do, let's get a sense of where this story sits within time and place and who the key players are as well. So we'll begin with the theologian N.T. Wright, who names 3 of the big themes that run through this story. And he says, I'll just read it out. He's up there, good on him. Luke's is the only gospel that tells us of Zacchaeus and his sudden moment of glory. And the hardened old tax collector fits into 3 of Luke's regular themes: the problem of riches and what to do about it, the identification of Jesus with sinners, and the faith which recognizes Jesus as Lord and discovers new life as a result. As I've been preparing for today, I've rewritten what I wanted to say a lot of times, like a stupid amount of times. But I was trying to work out, which way do I go? Do I go this theme? Do I go this theme? I don't know. And then it was this third theme, the idea of a transformational encounter with Jesus, that I just kept coming back to. Partly because I think the 2 other themes flow from this one, and also because I think, at least for me, at the heart of the story is one of invitation, of multiple invitations that all point in the direction of a life that reflects more of the nature of God and of God's desire for a transformed society. So there's an invitation to let go of the way that we have lived before, the way that has served us once but doesn't anymore, and the way that perhaps sometimes has only served us and not others. And there is an invitation to let go of that which we possess and that which possesses us. And sometimes it can be hard to tell the difference, whether it means money or status or time or something else. I know, at least for me, sometimes I can feel in control of it, and then in the next moment, like it's got a hold on me. And there's an invitation to repurpose what we have so that it reflects more of the nature of God. And this looks different for each character in the story. It might look different for each person today and those at home as well. So the first character is Zacchaeus, and Michaela Brutzazi, she describes his situation. Zacchaeus is an unlikely model of discipleship. It is faith that Luke insists is most important. He was a sinner by anyone's standards, supporting the occupying Roman government through tax collection, cheating his own people in the process, and becoming a very rich man. Jesus' words thus scandalize the crowd and stun Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus, come down quickly, for today I must stay at your house. Without hesitation, Zacchaeus responds to Jesus' invitation with equal generosity. He opens his house, heart, and life by proclaiming that half of my possessions, Lord, I shall give to the poor, and for those he has cheated, will repay it 4 times over. Anyone who, like Jesus, has worn their sin publicly and thus been the object of religious or social judgment knows the overwhelming joy Zacchaeus must have felt in hearing Jesus' unexpected and undeserved invitation. Jesus does not condemn, lecture, or ignore him, but challenges him to true conversion. Jesus' encounter prompts him to let go of some of his wealth and to put right the things between him and others. And Jesus' invitation to Zacchaeus is to host him for the night. And I find this really interesting because I expect Jesus to welcome Zacchaeus, but I expect it to be more like, oh, hey, Zacchaeus, welcome, come have a seat at my table. But instead what Jesus does is he essentially says, hey, Zacchaeus, welcome. You have a table with a spare seat. Invite someone. Zacchaeus is invited to do the very thing he's probably never experienced himself. And so that's some of the invitation that Zacchaeus experiences. But what about the good religious folk around him? What is the invitation that they receive? Well, I think it's an uncomfortable invitation. Zacchaeus has hurt them, and he has been pushed to the side, and probably for their own safety. But Jesus' invitation to them Jesus' invitation to them is to become a people that Zacchaeus can belong to. And they aren't there yet. We see this by the way they scoff when Jesus eats with the people that they call sinners. But Jesus is inviting them to expand their definition of who God is for, of who is important, and of who could reflect the nature of God. Sometimes I like to think that I've got enough in common with Zacchaeus, that if I was face to face with Jesus like he was, that I would say yes with the same enthusiasm of that tiny man up a tree. But just a few pages earlier, we see that the story of the rich young ruler, sometimes known as the rich young religious leader, and we see this isn't always the case. So I'm just going to read that story. It's from Luke 18. Once a religious leader asked Jesus this question: "Good teacher, what should I do to inherit eternal life?" "Why do you call me good?" Jesus asked. "Only God is good. But to answer your question, you know the commandments. You must not commit adultery, you must not murder, you must not steal, you must not testify falsely. Honor your father and mother." The man replied, "I've obeyed all these commandments since I was young." When Jesus heard his answer, he said, "There is still one thing you haven't done. Sell all your possessions and give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me." But when the man heard this, he became very sad, for he was very rich. So the same Jesus poses a very similar invitation to both Zacchaeus and this unnamed religious leader. One is filled with joy to hear this invitation, and the other with sadness. Jesus invites them both to let go of that which they possess or that which possesses them. They are invited, but they're not demanded. And sometimes when I think of living a changed life, I feel like a bit of a flop. I can really see all the things I haven't been able to do. I can't always see the things that I have changed. And so as I was getting ready and preparing for this, I was praying and reflecting and thinking, God, what is it? What is the thing that I have tried to repurpose? And this is what I came up with. Parties. Yeah, parties. So we'll work with that. Particularly the way that I host a party. So growing up, my parents, they were quite private people, except when it came to a party. They loved to host a big party, especially for our extended family. And since we were on the golf course, we had a lot of space for it as well. Every birthday and holiday, we would throw this big party with barbecue and then frisbee with the plates afterwards. In the afternoon, the kids would run around under the irrigators and whiz round on my uncle's motorbike. And one time I did get in a bit of trouble because I borrowed a golf cart I wasn't supposed to have, and I was showing off, and I was sort of zooming around on a sand hill, and I flipped it with my cousin in it. She is fine. I did check that. My mum saw it just the other day. But at this time, all I really cared about was making the best possible party for my family. And this is a part of my family life that I'm really fond of. I still am. And as I got older, I started to take on the responsibility of my own parties. So one day, I was about 10 years old, I walked into our garage and I took a look around and I thought, this won't do. This is a very full room. We have a spare kitchen sink. I know the joke is everything but the kitchen sink, but we even have that. So I hired my parents and my little brother to clear a dance floor. And then I invited all the cool kids in my primary school to their first and only American high school party for 10-year-olds. My parents did veto the root beer, though. They felt that wouldn't send a good message. But all I cared about was throwing the best possible party for all the cool kids in my class. And then when I was 16, I started hanging out with a few Christians, and I thought, these guys are really weird and also kind of fascinating, especially this one guy who was really good at giving advice and then crediting it back to God. And I thought, wow, he doesn't take his own credit. That's fascinating. And he lived really differently to the other people that I saw as well. Anyway, for my 17th birthday, I decided I was going to have a really rowdy party, the kind that you don't want your parents to find out about. Secretly hope that my mum's not watching at home. I didn't want to invite the Christians because I thought they might ruin the party, to be honest. And as it was, everyone else did, so probably could have brought them along. But it was a bit rude because they'd been really good friends by this point, and I was like, no, all I really care about is putting on the best possible party for the edgy kids I want to impress. And then only a few months after that, I started to try to follow this Jesus that they had been so into. And he didn't haul me down from any trees, but in a much less dramatic way, he invited me to reorient the way I treat my birthday party. I didn't think that was that funny, but I run with it. Yeah, cool. And to take what I have and repurpose it so that it reflects more of the nature of God. To take what I have that is all right and to change who it serves. So I lived for about 7 years as part of a neighbourhood across the other side of town. And it was a really beautiful neighbourhood with people of lots of different ages and cultures and life backgrounds, etc. And each year for my birthday, I would host what came to be known as Steffi's garden party. And we'd roll the barbecue down to the local park, throw up some bunting. I had an outdoor table tennis table and swing ball, and I'd invite anyone who wanted to come. One memory really sticks out from that time. There was this girl who was about 5 or 6 years old, and she was autistic. And autism looks different for different people, but for her, what it meant was it was so overwhelming for her to try and make a friend. And then there was another girl who was a year or two younger than her, and she was a bit like Dora the Explorer. She was big and bold and confident, and all the other kids thought she was a little bit of a bully, even though she was a lot younger than them. And so Dora the Explorer, she played with the autistic girl for all of my birthday party, the entire thing. And their parents, they were from two very different worlds, but lived just one street apart. So at the end, they exchanged numbers and made play dates for their girls. Two girls who, for very different reasons, found it so hard to make friends. And all I really cared about then was putting on the best possible party for the kids that never get invited to a party. When I thought about it later, I think this is a taster of what maybe the kingdom of God feels like and looks like, a place where everyone is welcome, where everyone finds their place. But to get to that moment, I had to let go of something that had a hold on me, namely the thought that my birthday party was something that's just for me or just for certain people. And there's a reason I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I had a birthday recently. It's a bit of a stretch. It was 2 months ago, but I like to celebrate an extended period. And I'd completely forgotten this idea that my birthday can be something that reflects a part of who God is. All I cared about was going to dinner with a few friends, and I did, and it was fine. But it didn't really feel like a party, not in the way that I had tasted that kingdom of God feast kind of idea. And so even though I didn't really feel like it this year, I swung open my door and I invited anyone that I could. And this is maybe where it gets a bit awkward. I apologize if you didn't get an invitation this year. It's not because you weren't invited, it's because I was lazy, and you can register your interest for next year. That's no problem. Anyway, I pushed myself up this metaphorical hill to have a party this year. And then when I got there, I took a look around and I saw it. There was one person who had told me just a couple of weeks earlier just how incredibly lonely they had felt this year. Another person that I knew was going through the most painful time of their life. Another that I thought, they just need something to laugh about. So many people were there because they needed a party that they were invited to. And then there were others still who get invited to every party, and they were there too. And there was room for everyone and room for more. And so for me, the way I think about parties has been shaped by encountering Jesus. But I don't want you to think that it's all about parties, in case, slightly more introverted people among us. I've been thinking about an old friend of mine who has repurposed something toward the nature of God, but a very different thing. So he's quite a tough guy, and he used to go along to a home group that I was part of, but his one true love was our community garden. And so one day he arrived at the community, back the truck up. I just wanted to get a sense of how much he put into the community garden. So much time. Most people did 2 hours in the weekend, but he was there most days, putting extra time in. Yeah. He arrives at the community garden, and there are kids there just throwing the tomatoes around the lawn. And these are red tomatoes, which in this life of this garden is shocking. The year before, we'd only had green tomatoes coming out our ears. There had been I still can't look at green tomato chutney the same. We just had so much. So this year, finally a red tomato, and they're just strewn everywhere. The kids see him and they run straight home. And he is angry. All this wasted time, wasted food as well. And so he's all set to storm across the road and let the kids have it. But when he gets there, he's overcome with sadness for the tomatoes. Genuinely, they mean a lot. They were red. And compassion for the kids who maybe have never seen how a plant grows. And so when he got there, he told them how much work it was to grow a tomato, and he invited them to come the next weekend and plant a plant that they could grow. And they did, and they came back every week and they tended to them. And so through encountering the story of Jesus, my friend had begun to let go of the way that he responded to situations of hurt, anger, and conflict. And this is not an easy invitation. He was well known for his anger. There's a reason that the kids ran straight home when they saw him. But in that moment, he took what he had and he repurposed it from rage into an opportunity to make something that could feed others with the people who had hurt him. And in the Bible, we see stories as well where God invites people to let go of their old way. The conversion of Saul to Paul comes to mind. Paul was, you might say, all about God. You might say a very strong and powerful communicator, but not so much into the Jesus thing at that time. He was very zealous in his approach, as in violently passionate in his approach to God and not Jesus. But then he gets a glimpse of who God is and realizes that glimpse is Jesus, and spends the rest of his life trying to encourage others to explore Jesus as well. So Paul takes what he has and repurposes it so that it reflects more of the nature of God, just as Zacchaeus did, just as my friend with the tomatoes, and me sometimes when I throw a really good party. But what does it mean for us? Sometimes I sit in church and I think, Zacchaeus, Paul, these are lofty goals. I want to change, but I don't have room for more. And I am someone that has a relatively free life. I don't have a kid or a partner, even a dog. But if you're in this boat with me, I think we can take some encouragement. Zacchaeus wasn't called to go and make more money and distribute that, but he did something with what he had. And Jesus didn't tell him, go build a new house and invite him into that. Jesus invited himself into the house that Zacchaeus already had. We are not always called to do more and more and more, but to think and reflect on what we already have and how we could reorient and repurpose that. To take what we have and repurpose it so that it reflects more of the nature of God. And so just to finish up, I want to invite us into a time of silence where we can pray or reflect on what God might have already given us and that we might be able to repurpose. And then afterwards the band will come up for a song.